Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the January 9th meeting of the Cunningham Township Board. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu. Here. Mr. Evans.
Here.
Miss Hersey. Miss Colasetti.
Here.
Miss Bishop.
Here.
Miss Wilkin. Here. Mr. Quisenberry.
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here.
Supervisor Chenoweth.
Present.
Assessor Williams.
Next item is approval of minutes from the December 12th, 2022 meeting, as well as the December 12th, 2022 public hearing. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Chandra. Any substantial changes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? None noted. Public participation. If anyone wishes to address the Cunningham Town Board, please step up to the microphone. Seeing none, we'll move on. Committee to verify bills.
Since I sent you the quarterly report online, I thought it might be easier if I also sat here and walked through. Let's see, so we are, here's the bills. So this month we have.
Danielle, could you make sure your mic's on?
Yeah, can you hear me? It's, okay,
That's
there we
better.
go.
That's much better.
In the town fund, we have $51,527.58. In the general assistance fund, we have $72,002.11. Our total expenditures for the month were $123,529.69. Then I will give the rest of the report, but happy to take any questions around the bills.
Seeing none, go ahead.
Let's see, so, just a couple of things I wanted to highlight from the supervisor's memo. We continue to see kind of a steady decrease in general assistance. I think that has to do with the strength of the economy coming kind of out of a December lull. We still have a small number of general assistance participants who are homeless. Most of them, they may be in and out of homelessness or staying at the shelter. We did have a large number of applications submitted in December. That's not unusual. We tend to see an unemployment slump in December. So we had 36 applications. And you can see information about our education and employment track and our disability and wellness track. I will point out, and I'm trying to do a little bit of a better job with the disability and wellness track because I've focused so much on Social Security. We're doing a lot of healthcare navigation and helping people access doctoring and mental health resources. So I'm trying to outline that a little bit better in the memo so that you can see some of the things happening on that track. We are trying to work more closely with the Department of Rehabilitation Services. This is an organization that assists people with disabilities in finding jobs that can accommodate their disability. And it's really important, given that a person can't live off $325 a month if that's the only income and they have a disability. It's important that they have another source of income. So we've been trying to really build that relationship with DOORS. We continue to do transportation assistance. You can see that we've done 91 so far, and then 61 dash passes. So generally speaking, everyone who's on general assistance receives transportation assistance. We now have seen a little bit of a reprieve around rental assistance. We supported 8 households in the month of December, but we are seeing a record number of actual cases coming in the front door, so about 80 per month, which is double the typical submission. It may be in the month of December, we have people, usually the numbers either go down because we have fewer applicants who finish their applications or because fewer people actually qualify. So if you don't income qualify, then we would not see as many, and that has been an ongoing issue. I just wanted to, I'm going to give it to you every month where we are, and we'll see it in the midterm report. We budgeted $125,000 in rental assistance, and we've spent about 84% of that as of January, and that is with us going down to just supporting 1 month of rent. It is the case that RPC has launched a a move-in assistance program. They will pay deposit assistance. That actually came out after I sent this memo to you. So they're doing a deposit assistance program. And so at least for those where a deposit assistance would help people move into housing, which is a small portion of who we work with, they'll be able to handle those cases. So we're hoping we'll get a little bit of reprieve with that additional limited time-bound program. We now have 124 households who have moved into subsidized housing, so we're just chugging along with that, trying to move our participants into subsidized housing with all available options. Housing First, I realized going back and forth, we continue to basically pay rent for either current or former general assistance participants. I think I've been unclear in the past and made that clear in this memo that it includes both current general assistance participants who may not be paying rent on a regular basis, so we pay rent for them to make sure that that's the priority. They do agree to that. It's not a forced situation, but they do agree to that. If they are not paying rent on a regular basis, we'll pay for them, and then we give them the difference. And so that's kind of a service for our participants. And then we have 2 who are former GA participants who maybe are having issues with cooperating with that program, but we still want to keep them housed. So that Housing First program has been great because it's a gap where someone who may be having trouble cognitively paying rent or organizationally paying rent can still stay on housing. Let's see, a bridge to home. I just wanted to point out a couple of things around the Christmas storm and our outreach services. So we served 40 folks on the street in November. We served 35 in December. We worked really hard to make sure everybody who we were working with, plus everyone on the Strides wait list, which plus the folks on See You at Home wait list were housed. So Cunningham Township kind of played a leadership role in working with all of those lists, getting everybody on the same page, trying to coordinate who's going where, making sure every bed was filled. We appreciate that Strides and MTD expanded capacity. We appreciate Salvation Army and the Canteen Run for adding additional beds for overflow shelter because we were told that that was needed. And our staff, I just want to give a props to Martell Miller in particular, who was driving around town Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and the 2 days after, even though it was his time off, to make sure that there was no one unhoused. We could not find anybody unhoused. We are not aware of anyone who was turned away. And honestly, this is the first winter that I can say that in the time that I've been township supervisor. So I just think it's a huge success for our community as a whole, and it shows what collaboration can really look like. We are full we are housing now 8 households in a hotel with the public health dollars, as well as some ESG dollars and and the tax levy dollars. Rapid rehousing has really picked up, and so we have 3 households in that, and we have 2 more openings. And then our emergency housing program, we've been full at 8 households served. And 9 of them included 9 Urbana school children, Urbana children, 7 of them school age. We currently, as of the time of this memo, did not have any actively unsheltered families on our wait list. We continue to take referrals. We've had 55 referrals from the school system since our program start, which was April of this year. And 6 of the referrals have ended up in our shelter, and then we have 2 that came through crisis nursery. Last month, we helped one family who had their water shut off in the middle of the blizzard get their water turned back on. There should be a law against shutting off water in the winter. I would encourage our legislators to take care of that. But there's no longer utility shutoffs when the weather is this cold. Food support, we are making a shift, and we continue to support 20 residents who can't get to a food pantry each month. We have been working with St. Pat's, and we are transitioning to working with the Vineyard Church and their food pantry. just because of some capacity issues with St. Pat's. They've seen a lot, actually all of the food pantries are seeing a lot more demand. And so just to be able to meet our rising demand, we're partnering with the Vineyard going forward. So I'll have some more information about that. We're also partnering with United Way and the Ride United program, which uses DoorDash drivers to deliver food. So people in Urbana who are dealing with food insecurity can call our office at any time, and we have an intern who staffs and intakes and makes sure that whatever their need is, we address that need, and that may be a Ride United, or it might be a Bucket Brigade, or it might be just letting them know where the closest food pantry is to their household and when it's open. And then last but not least, Solidarity Gardens, we're holding a planning retreat with our members in late January to plan our next season. So we're excited to get started with the growing season once the ground is thawed. And I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
We'll start with Mary Alice.
Hi, Daniel, thank you. I was wondering if you could scroll back to the rental assistance. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question.
Absolutely.
So you assisted 8 households last month. And it says you have 80 applications per month. So that's only 10% of the, can you give some background in terms of the other 90% of households who aren't qualified?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there's a couple of things. One is that we are seeing a lot more people applying for rental assistance who don't have sufficient income or have no income, particularly through our referrals through the school district. It's one of the things that we're hoping to shore up with an expansion of our rental assistance program. So if we're able to expand our rental assistance program, we're going to really concentrate on the McKinney-Vento definition, act homeless families. And those are families that maybe currently are unemployed or just got a job, and for those who are unemployed, we'll help them with employment navigation. For those who just received a job but they don't have the 30 days, if we have an employment letter and we have additional funds, then we can move them into independent housing. So I think that what we're hoping is, I would say there's a couple of reasons for the gap. One is that we had fewer service days in December, so there's less processing of cases as a result. But I'm sure the trends generally have been that we've seen quite a few cases that were in that kind of McKinney-Vento definition act homeless, or were just starting to make money but not necessarily enough to qualify. So we'd really like to put some case management behind that and work with them to be successful in achieving kind of access to rental assistance and more housing stability. So as you'll see, that's a different number than we've had. I mean, you've been seeing 25, 20. I mean, it's been pretty regular. December was unusual in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Chris.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and the wonderful work your staff is doing. About rental assistance and the whole housing piece, could you give us kind of your sense of, maybe you can or can't, but how well Urbana landlords are accepting the source of income on rental assistance? Has there been any problems, or are things improving?
Well, so there's two different issues with source of income and landlords. The first is whether or not they'll take vouchers from the housing authority, and the second is whether or not they'll take rental assistance from Township. That's for rental arrears as well as move-in. We really haven't had a problem with landlords taking rental arrears. They've already out the money. The people are in the housing. It's expensive to evict people, so we don't see a lot of problems with folks unwilling to play ball. With folks who are moving in, it is trickier. We'll see landlords who basically, they're requiring, you have 3 or 4 months, 3 or 4 times the income of rent. They're doing intensive credit checks. And so it really depends on how tight the housing market is. The tighter the housing market is, the more choosy they can be. In terms of the source of income discrimination bill, we do have, I don't actually know, I didn't include it in my memo, so I'm glad you reminded me. Sometimes we have so many things moving. We do have a fair housing coalition that is working together, and we are going to have, I'll put this in next month's memo, but in March we are hosting 2 workshops. one for tenants and one for landlords. The tenant one is being hosted, I mean, it's this, both cities, or it's actually, right now, Champaign's not at the table. It's been City of Urbana, RPC, Hope Fair Housing, Housing Action Illinois, and Cunningham Township, and the tenant union. And so we'll be hosting the one and providing food for the tenants. It'll be at Champaign Public Library. It will be at the Housing Authority. And then the second one is hosted by the Housing Authority for landlords. And it will be the day after. So I'll get you flyers about those two, but those are collaborations that we have to try to get the word out and let folks know about their rights, as well as to make sure landlords in both cities, especially Champaign, since they haven't had that kind of, they haven't prohibited source of income discrimination. So we'll have those two events that hopefully will educate the field. I'll also say that in addition to our local enforcement, which is very important that we continue that enforcement. We will also be referring source of income discrimination cases to Hope Fair Housing, which has a fleet of lawyers who have said they are willing to follow up with cases in Urbana, and they will also do testing if needed. And so we are hoping to pursue aggressively source of income discrimination in Urbana with their help and with the City of Urbana's help.
Any other questions? Chandra?
You mentioned employment navigation. Is that something that a service you regularly offer? And then if so, or if not, like, can you explain more about that?
Yeah, so right now, general assistance participants who are on our EEO track, which is an employment and education opportunities track, receive employment assistance navigation. So that will mean setting goals in relation to their training and education, and then pursuing, sometimes it'll include helping them get food handling certification or finishing a forklift employer training at Parkland, and then we will help direct them. So what we do is we keep track of employment fairs and job fairs in the community, job opportunities, and then our employment specialist will let everybody know on her track when there are fairs or when there are specific opportunities in the area. And then we basically say, what do you need? If you don't have a cell phone to receive calls, we'll make sure you have a cell phone. You don't have work clothes, we'll get you work clothes. If you don't have interview clothes, we'll get you interview clothes. So we're kind of supporting that in the general assistance track. Right now, I think it's 16, let me see how many folks are on that track. 12 folks are on that track, and 39 on the disability and wellness track. So what we're hoping with rental assistance is to do, be able to support rental assist, have another case manager who's able to basically support families where they're at. So they would work with the person in the school district, and they'd be looking at what does this family need? They're unstably housed. They may not have access to a voucher. We would certainly look for a voucher first as an opportunity. If that opportunity does not present itself, then we'd look at, okay, what are options for you to increase your income and how can we support that piece? Is it childcare issues? Let's get you signed up with the free childcare for the homeless through childcare resources. What are the barriers to working? So trying to do an assessment and to basically support people and be able to pursue employment, and then this kind of expansion of our rental assistance program would allow them with a job offer and a letter with a rate, we would qualify them for rental assistance, so they wouldn't necessarily have to bring in the 30 days income if they're unstably housed. We could get them and their children in earlier, and it would specifically be for families with children who are unstably housed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Grace?
Thanks also for this presentation. I'm so glad to hear that we don't have families currently on the wait list that are
Isn't it great?
homeless.
It's so great.
Yeah, and that, all the work that went into the winter storm and having people housed for that, so I so much appreciate the efforts gone into that. I forgot, I did have a question about the bills, a general one, if I may still ask that.
Sure.
With salaries, for lots of employees, there's multiple payments for each employee, as there has been in the past. And if you could just confirm, my working assumption is that they're getting paid out of different pools of money or possibly reimbursements or other reasons. If you could just explain a little more the multiple payments per employee.
Yeah, so there is a a QuickBooks glitch where you'll see people with 0 next to their name. So that is just based on recurring payments that haven't been wiped off. But generally, you'll see 2 payments in a month. Let me look at, depending on how many, it all depends on how many pay periods. There's 26 pay periods in the month, and I'd have to look and see if we had 3 pay periods or 2. If it was 3, then you'll see 3 deposits. If it was 2, then you'll see otherwise. The other piece is if you look at somebody who is, let me get an example. Trying to look. When we pay somebody out of different pots of money, their pay also shows up several times. So there'll be a pot that may come out of ESG funding, which is funded by the state, and then there might be a pot that comes out of the match. So that may be another reason why we'll see 2 payments that really happened in one check. But when we split them across different, what we call classes. And so that would show up as multiples.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I do want to back up before you go into your mid-year report to ask for a motion to verify the bills.
I'll move to put the bills on file.
I'll second.
Moved by Chandra, seconded by Mary Alice. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that housekeeping. So I just briefly want to provide the mid-year report, which I also sent you an email, and it's on your screens. Basically, we've just broken it up by town fund and a general assistance fund. What you'll see is a couple of good pieces of news. So we want to see everything close to 50 to 55%. So that would be kind of what is expected. We have much higher interest than expected because we've been shifting. We basically shift monies between 2 different accounts based on interest, and then we negotiate higher rates. We just did that with Busey, and so we've done better on interest than we expected, which is great. Personnel, and this will look very similar to the quarterly report. So essentially, the assessor has used his personnel other that was for temporary hires that he had that he said was finishing by the end of the quarter. So I wouldn't expect there'd be much growth there. I did mention this in the Q1 report that our FICA was miscategorized. So we're under on IMRF, but we're over on FICA, and that was because of a budgetary error that is in the budget that was passed. Then we had an equipment purchase, one-time a purchase of new assessor computers. Otherwise, I think everything is under that 55%. The bottom line with the town fund is our total expenses at 42.8. So we're doing pretty well in terms of overall. With general assistance, I'll just jump over to income is looking good. We had several grants we didn't expect. We basically, instead of fundraising for the utility fund, we've been fundraising, it's been going into the angel donor fund, so you'll see that. We don't spend more than we have in the angel donor fund, so even if we're under budget on that, we're not going to overspend. We have what we have, and right now we have a surplus. Doing great on interest income. And then essentially, you saw this with Q1, supplies for school children to go back to school ended up in supplies. It is classed through our emergency program, but that's why that is so high. That was a USD grant that we didn't expect to receive, but they offered to us at the first part of the fiscal year. Building and repairs and maintenance, we're a little bit over half. We've also installed new boilers, insulation, and mini splits. I think you saw some of that with the first quarter. I think things are looking good there. And then the housing allowance vendor pay does include rent payment from GA. So if their payment for GA went to their rent, it actually shows up here. We're a little bit under on personal allowances, so I think between the two, we should be fine. We are on track, though, with personal allowances. We know a lot about rental assistance. I've explained that issue. And then with ESG, basically, we did spending from the previous year. At the beginning of this year, we just started about 3 months ago, 2.5, 3 months ago, spending our fiscal year 23 ESG dollars. And so as a result, you'll see that spending from the previous fiscal year shows up in that number, which is why it is high. But you'll also see a higher income. So it should balance out. We're not overspending any more than we're receiving in ESG. We have a new category for the USD grant, and then Solidarity Gardens invested in a cooler. And so you will see that essentially we used past year dollars to pay $3,000. And the steering committee of Solidarity Gardens kind of governs what happens with those donations that come in. So that is all, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the report. That's all. Yeah.
Okay.
So generally speaking, I should say we're at 48.4%. So generally speaking, we're pretty much on target, hoping that the second half of the year looks similar to the first half of the year, except for rental assistance. So
Okay, we don't have a report from the assessor. Is there any unfinished business? Great, we'll move on to new business. The only item on there is a discussion and overview of the proposed process for filling the vacancy in the assessor's office. There was a memo in your packet. As you know, the Cunningham Township assessor has resigned effective February 13th, 2023, which is the same date as our February town board meeting. In your packet is a proposed process for filling this vacancy. I want to thank a lot of folks for pulling all this information together, including the supervisor's office, the assessor's office, the township attorney, city clerk's office. We consulted the township code, property tax code. There was a call to the township officials of Illinois. Parts of this process are very clear, particularly those related to the qualifications for the office and credentials required to serve in the office. What wasn't as clear was actually the process for nominating and voting on a candidate. But just for the public, the applicant must be a registered voter. They must be a resident of Cunningham Township for 1 year. They have to have completed a course of study and hold at least one of the credentials that are listed in the property tax code. And that's in the memo. They must be affiliated with the same political party as the person vacating the office, and then it describes how you verify your affiliation with the party. And then you are not eligible if you have been convicted in any court in the U.S. of any infamous crime, bribery, perjury, and other felony. And I know you're going to say, well, what's an infamous crime? And that was kind of a vague description in the code, but basically it amounts, I believe, to a felony conviction. But we'll get to that bridge if we have to cross it. Well, we won't cross that one, but anyway. What I'm proposing, or what we're proposing based on our research, is that we would ask individuals who want to apply for the position, they should submit a cover letter, proof of at least one of the credentials required, proof of party affiliation, and that's outlined in the memo, and their resume by 5 o'clock on January 31st, so that's about three weeks from now, to the Urbana City Clerk's office. Either in person or materials can be emailed. We'll supply copies of all the application documents from all applicants will be provided to the town board, the township supervisor, the assessor, and the township attorney in advance of the meeting next month. And then we would ask the town board to nominate and then vote on the appointment of a qualified individual to fill the vacancy. So unlike municipal vacancies or vacancies in the city council, that's a mayoral appointment to make, and that's outlined in the municipal code. There's no real direction in the code as to who brings an appointment to the board. So the township attorney recommended that the nomination come from the board itself. I don't expect we'll be flooded with applications, but you never know. So if that sounds reasonable to you all, then we will get this announcement out. It'll go out in a press release, social media, we'll share it with you so you can circulate it, and we'll do that part of it similar to the way we do a city council media release. Questions? Yes.
Just had a quick question, and you may have addressed this. How are you assessing party affiliation?
It would be,
Since people don't register as Democrat or Republican in the state.
It's per the code. They can establish it by their record of voting in primary elections, so you'd get that from the county clerk. Having held or holding an office in the party organization, so that would be, I assume, one of the partisan Democratic organizations in Champaign County. Then you can establish your affiliation based on their record of participating in a political party's nomination or election caucus. So I think basically your primary voting record. Or there may be other proof that would suffice as well, so. But you're right, people don't register anymore for parties.
Okay. Yeah, I just know that there was someone who ran for city council as a Democrat, but they had never voted in the Democratic primaries, so I just wanted to be clear
Yeah,
about whether or not,
there are a couple
how
of
that
other,
would be established.
there are a couple of other routes. We'll see what happens. Grace?
Thanks for clarifying this process and sifting through all the qualifications and how we're going to do it. I would just ask that, I understand we're going to have it in advance of the February 13th meeting, but just as much in advance as possible. Makes me a little nervous that it seems like we have to fill it that day, right? Because that's when it's vacant. Just if we were to have a lot of applications, it seems like a lot to sift through, nominate, and vote all in one meeting with kind of a hard deadline, or we don't have an assessor.
Well, we'll have, the 31st is the deadline, so we'll have 2 weeks before the meeting, and we'll get those materials out to you as soon as we can. James?
Just to clarify, we're not required to appoint the replacement that day the vacancy occurs. We have
I believe we
30
have
days or
30 or 60 days.
60
yeah.
days? I mean, we don't want to be without an assessor, don't
Right,
get me
it'd
wrong.
be better
but
to have one
We're
in
not
place.
required to do it the day
No.
after Wayne's resignation is implemented.
Right, but
Okay.
if it all looks, if you're comfortable with doing it, then it will be ready to go that day. And Wayne will be ready to go that day, so. Okay, so I'm seeing consensus on that, and we'll go ahead and get this announcement out there and from there. Well, okay. No further business before this meeting. We stand adjourned.